Welcome to Global Tax Talk from Bangkok. I'm Will Norris, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Rose Sim and Pauline Lum, partners in Singapore and Malaysia, respectively. Rose, Pauline, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, Will.
You're very welcome.
Excited to be here.
So let's start off, as we always do these days, with Pillar 2. And obviously this is going to have a significant effect on businesses' operating models. The Global Information Return is going to vastly increase the amount of data which has to be collected and reported, hundreds of thousands of data points, potentially in the case of some companies. And companies are beginning to ask themselves if their data systems, their processes are up to dealing with this. So can each of you say a brief word first about the status of Pillar 2 in your countries, and then how are businesses dealing with this? How are they changing the way they do? So Rose, why don't we start with you?
I think Singapore will introduce Pillar 2 from 2025.
Mm-hmm.
The government has been socializing and prepping companies to get ready. They were a bit concerned, when there were very little action. So I would describe it as a data journey for a lot of our clients, that what we see, as well as engaging them on that data discovery journey. And I would say it takes a bit longer than expected to do that data discovery. And what happens is the discovery of understanding where the data needed for Pillar 2. But it's not just Pillar 2, right? It's more around your tax processes. It's about your country by country. It's the whole suite of things around where the data sourcing, what's the current state of the companies and the way it's being organized to collect information. So I think it is a continuous journey on that process and discovery, and of course that leads us to the thinking aloud on the systems that is needed for that reporting.
Well, Pauline.
Yep. I think similarly what we're seeing in Malaysia, if I can just put them in sort of like two buckets, I think we have the sort of larger M&Es who are quite clear about the requirements, and because of all these data requirements or technology or other enablers that may be pushing through their organizations, they have a slightly higher sense of awareness, if you like. And then of course you have the second batch where you have it's slightly smaller and they're really trying to grapple with all these things. But I think to Rose's point, what we are also beginning to see is a lot of companies are having to relook at how they are actually harnessing everything themselves. I mean, for finance and tax, they're very used to looking at corporate income tax, indirect taxes. And now Pillar 2, I mean, it's a different beast altogether.
Right.
And having to upskill.
Let me just stop you there for a sec. So in relation to Malaysia, so Pillar 2 is going ahead. Has it been legislated?
It's going ahead.
Okay,
yes,
great.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we're beginning to see more companies push forward to think about what is their action plan and how can they reframe the conversation as well as leverage off some of the initiatives that are really going through.
Yeah. I think maybe I would just add a little bit in the Singapore context to that two groups.
Yeah.
I think the journey of discovery, that process, what suits them is somewhat still at a stage where clients are still evaluating what's best. Because there are competing needs.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just Pillar 2, but of course the cloud and ERP modernization. So that also brings another dimension to some of these things that the companies...
Can I just ask you both a quick supplemental question on this? So in both countries, tax incentives have been a very important part of encouraging inward investment. Can you just both say a word about how both of your countries are reacting to that? And particularly maybe start with Singapore again, because there has been recent action there.
So I think the government is still quite keen to pursue the incentive route to encourage the foreign investments into the country and to build. Singapore is a small economy, so we do need that. So that continues to be relevant as far as Singapore is concerned, but the levers on some of things, how it can be used, I think companies need to evaluate in terms of the commitments that they want to give back to the government.
But a refundable investment credit for yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
And what about Malaysia?
I think not too different in Malaysia, because Malaysia and Singapore is always a twin city sort of like concept when you think about the incentives, given our proximity and history. So I think companies, again, it's not just about tax incentives, right? It's fiscal, non-fiscal benefit. So I think they're looking at a broader base in terms of how we can retone, bringing in the right kind of investment, the right kind of transfer of knowledge, but it may not always just be hinged on what we saw previously on just the tax incentives. And we're seeing more of that as well.
Okay, so let's just broaden the lens out a little bit. And businesses management, senior management, the C-suite, whatever you want to call it, is asking more and more of tax departments quite often, well, the tax departments themselves have less and less. And it's about looking around corners. It's about predicting the future, about being more involved in the, sort of the business side of things. Where is this business going to go? What are you seeing, again, across the region in terms of how tax functions are dealing with this, tax function transformation, and just, as I say, just this general onslaught of things which are coming at the tax function?
Yep, sure. I think there are many external push factors, just to the point. So from a regional perspective, whether you're talking about ESG reporting, you're talking about the hail of e-invoicing,
right.
e-reporting, that is pushing that shift for tax functions to have to reach out and work more closely with other stakeholders. And
right.
I think that creation of awareness is allowing tax functions to reform, reassess themselves and see how they're sort of like more embedded into the broader business requirements,
right.
whether it's a risk dimension, whether it's looking at better disclosure.
Correct.
So if you think about the overall corporate compliance element, and I think in the region, whether you're talking about it from a governance voluntary program perspective,
right.
Whether you're looking at it from a tax data collection perspective, and we see that already in Malaysia, and of course upstream coming on for Singapore, I think that's causing a lot of tax functions to relook at their process, embed better business process alignment, leveraging enablers like technology to see how they can embed and get better quality data that is just going to meet everyone's requirements, including tax.
Great. Good. Rose?
Yeah, looking around the corner, I think just to echo Pauline's point, the use of technology is something that I think is also high on the agenda,
yep.
especially with coming out from COVID and some of the business pressures, the sustainability agenda. So we see that being adopted organization-wise,
yep.
not just tax, but finance and everybody else, to up their game a little bit, to draw the insights and analytics to, in the longer run, to improve the shareholder value. So tax compliance is almost like a given, like you have to get it
yep.
correct. However, how do you better risk manage? So we've been seeing quite a lot of client conversations around how do I improve my
yes.
tax performance to optimize it, to draw the analytics. What does it mean? Pillar 2 transfer pricing, value chain transformation. So those are typical themes that we see quite a fair bit.
Good. Well, Pauline, Rose, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for joining us, and come back again so that you stay global tax ready.